This week on Round 2 podcast, I had an crazy enjoyable conversation with Paul Lemberg. You guys, when I tell you that my cheeks and mouth hurt from smiling and laughing, like I am not exaggerating. This guy has had round 2, he's had about 20 rounds, and each one of them is as unique and dynamic as the next. Currently, he is a business coach for businesses that want to scale and make more money. He literally says at the top of his website that he helps entrepreneurs become wealthy. I absolutely loved this conversation. I am so excited that Paul is now a part of my life. And I am so thrilled to see what comes next for him because despite having a decades-long career already, I know that he's literally just beginning. So I hope that you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. It was a ton of fun. And as always, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and enjoy. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Round 2 podcast. I am your host, Nikki Corbett, and I am excited to be here with today's guest, Paul Lemberg. Paul, welcome to the Round 2 podcast.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you for having me on the Round 2 podcast.
You are more than welcome. So like we talked about for a few minutes earlier, we got connected because you somehow found me, and I think that is the coolest thing ever. So I did go through a deep dive of your website earlier. And one thing that I wrote down that I thought was awesome is that you help entrepreneurs become wealthy. So yes. Why don't you tell me about that?
That's the first line on my website.
I know that caught my eye. I said, you know what? I said, however he came up with these 4 words together, that's the hook. That brought me in. I read the whole thing from there.
Excellent. It did its job. So yes. I have been doing this since the middle 90s. I work with entrepreneurs and business owners. I work with business owners and I help figure out how to grow their businesses. Okay. Usually they come to me when they're stuck in some way or another. They're not growing as fast as they want to, or they want to exit, or they want to do something. And I just deep dive. I don't have any cookie cutter ideas. I just kind of deep dive into their businesses. And it's really easy for an outsider to see what's not working.
Got it. Yep.
And that's what I do. I look at what it is they want to accomplish and why they can't do it with their current business, the way it's set up, or what's missing. And then I have done this so many times. I have a lot of ideas about how to do it. And when they execute, this is the tricky part.
Yes.
You can read a book.
Sure.
But the book will never kick you in the ass. The book will never say, hey, you read this stuff, but you didn't do anything with it.
Accountability.
And it's accountability. And it's even more than that. Because accountability is like holding you to do what you said you were going to do.
Yeah.
Whereas what my job is to get them to do what I told them they should do. Right? It's slightly different, right?
Yep. Yes.
Right. It's slightly different. But that thing, I've worked with entrepreneurs and it'll take like a year to get them to do something that I know is going to change their business. Okay. And they just don't do it. They've got all sorts of reasons why they're not doing it. And they're all legit reasons, but they're just not doing it.
Yeah.
And when they finally take action, it has, for a lot of them, it's really led to fortunes.
I love that. So what kinds of businesses? Is it all kinds, all sizes? Are we talking specific industry or what are we talking here?
The range that I kind of set up as the box that I want to fit people into is they're at the very, very low end. They're like $500,000 or maybe $1 million in sales, and up to about 5 or even 10, but tends to be 5. The reason is I'm scary to C-suite executives in a small company.
Oh, okay. Got it.
From the standpoint of, if I'm working with the CMO, the chief marketing officer, and I'm coming up with marketing ideas for them. The CMO sitting there thinking, well, they're paying Lemberg a lot of money. Like, what do they need me for?
Oh,
Right.
okay.
So that starts to happen at around 5 million in sales.
Okay.
So that's kind of why I have that box. It's like $1 million to 5 million, $500,000 to 5 million. They have to be able to pay my fees, and they have to be not so big that they have a fully fleshed out C-suite. Because I threaten those people.
Sure.
I had to figure this out that happened. But it's those size businesses.
Okay.
And I don't work with lawyers.
Okay.
And the reason I don't work with lawyers is really simple. I've helped them. But lawyers think negotiating a fee after the work's done is like sport. So I don't really want to deal with that. So I
wouldn't want to either. I don't blame you.
I don't want to deal with that. And I tend not to work with real estate people or people who sell securities like stockbrokers, or they're typically not interested in what I do, but they're also not really good candidates for what I do. Okay. It's hard to figure out how they can make more money. I spent a year as a stockbroker. I actually was really good at it, and I realized I hated it. So
oh my gosh. Okay.
The day I married my second wife. That day.
Wow. Hey, well, that was a good day, right?
It was a good day for me. She was a little freaked out by it, I think.
She's like, wait, what did I just do?
But everybody else, I'm really, the way I look at things is businesses are, and everybody says, if I'm in a room and I'm at the front of the room, I say, who thinks their business is different? And about half the hands go up. Okay. And I say, well, look. I said, I have to tell you, your business is just like everybody else's. They're all the same. And they're not all the same. That's a silly thing to say. But they have all the same moving parts. And I work with those moving parts. So it's really easy for me to work with, business is business. And people say, well, that's not really true. It's like, well, it is true because they have all the same moving parts. And if you figure out how to push the buttons that change those moving parts, then you're kind of good to go. So
I can relate to that statement. I think that, I specialize in operations. And so it's kind of similar where it's like, okay, maybe it's a different process because you're in, a city, you're like a city supporting team, or you work for the city of XYZ. Right. Or maybe it's a real estate company, or maybe it's a consulting company in the beauty space, but like operations are operations. And if something needs to be streamlined, I don't need to be a subject matter expert in the, details, but I can look at it and I can say, well, here's where you could save some time. Here's where you could save some money. If these two people are talking better, then you'll do all these things. So I understand that.
Yeah. And that's kind of that's exactly how it is. And my background before this is I was a software designer. Okay. So I used that same skill set to analyze things, to take things apart. Yeah. And you're right. I used to walk into software companies and I would say, it was really arrogant. I would say, I know everything about your business better than you do.
Oh, wow.
except your technology. I don't know anything about your technology. So it's just like what you just said. I'm not the subject matter expert in their technology, but I am the subject matter expert in how these things are run. Yeah. Yeah. And so it made it really easy. Plus, it was a great sales tool. It would totally freak people out when I said that.
Oh, I'm sure.
Who is the guy?
Right? Well, you come in with that level of confidence and you're like, hey, I know what I'm doing better than you do. So let's talk. They're kind of like, wait, what?
Yeah. And if you can pick out a few things, I would say a few things that I knew were right just because of the way the data organizes itself across all these businesses. And I would say things and they'd think I was reading their minds, so that's a good thing. If you can read your prospect's mind, you are most of the way to a sale.
So tell me about the software, though. What type of software was it?
I wrote software that ran some of the foreign branch networks of the world's largest banks.
Oh, wow.
And which is really funny since I have a fine arts degree. But
that That's amazing. But I feel like there's detail in fine arts and there's detail in software programming. So
There's a thing about, I don't think they still say this, but back in the 1970s,
mm-hmm.
in the late 70s, which is when I entered the software business,
Uh-huh.
that there was this thing that people thought that if you had a fine arts degree or if you had music in your background, that
Mm-hmm.
made you a good programmer.
Oh,
And I
interesting.
still don't know why people thought that, but I
Uh-huh.
have a fine arts degree and I'm a photographer and I'm also a musician. So
Okay.
I think somehow those things got me my first job.
Here's
So
something. This is just my own personal opinion, but I have often come across or met people, and when I have found that they are at a certain level of intelligence in the business world, that they're also very, very creative, whether it's they play music or they do art or they do something. So I feel like there's some sort of correlation there where, and they're good at those things. Like I had a friend and he's a very, very intelligent man, like C-suite level executive, and he can also just rip on the drums, and he can sit at the piano and just create music. And I'm like,
right.
first of all, how do you have the time to do this? And second of all, this is so wild that your brain has both sides just firing very
I
well.
am very much like both brained. They say you're
Mm-hmm.
right brained, you're left brained. I am like
Yeah.
equal across those two things.
Uh-huh.
And and so yeah, I stepped into the software business without any, I was thinking about this round two idea,
Mm-hmm.
and I stepped into the software business with no training and no education, no nothing. And I
Okay.
somehow just knew how to do it.
That's
Uh,
so cool.
which I can't explain. I actually have an explanation, but it takes us into another realm. I believe that those were things were gifted divinely to me,
Oh,
uh,
okay.
because there's no other explanation that
I
makes any
mean,
sense at all.
yeah, I mean, I don't, software is tricky. So I don't know that, you just kind of are born understanding it, but perhaps you
I
were.
don't think so, but well, it's possible that I was born understanding it, or it may just
Maybe.
be, somebody said go be a programmer, and I said sure, why not?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
somehow I ended up writing code for banks,
Okay.
and I ended up developing this software with my partner that ran the foreign branches. If
Mm-hmm.
you're a foreign branch, say you're a bank in London,
Okay.
and you serve the people of England, and
Mm-hmm.
you have checking accounts for them and savings accounts for them and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's like very low complexity and high volume.
Okay.
And
Sure.
there's a lot of transactions.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if there's a foreign office in that bank, and
Mm-hmm.
if they serve international customers,
Mm-hmm.
those tend to be low amounts of transactions and
Okay.
very high complexity.
Oh, okay.
And so that's the stuff I wrote software that did that for giant banks that ran their foreign
Oh,
branch networks. And
okay.
it's just weird. I had an expertise in it, and I understood how currencies worked, and I
Mm-hmm.
understood all this interest rate stuff. And I was really good at listening, and I still am. That's part of my skill set, is
Mm-hmm.
I'm really good at listening and
Mm-hmm.
figuring out what things mean as they're flying by me. That's kind
That's,
of, it's a weird kind of skill, whereas I analyze
I
stuff
think
on the
that's a
fly,
great
and it
skill
helps
to
me.
have. Yeah,
And it was fun for being in that business because I understood what people were
I
talking about.
bet.
And finance people tend to not understand technology. I think that may have
Mm-hmm.
changed now. But at the time, finance people didn't really understand technology. And then when technology people would explain it to them, they would explain it to
Mm-hmm.
them in a way that made those people feel stupid. So,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because they didn't get it.
Mm-hmm.
And I got really good at explaining it in ways that didn't make people feel stupid.
I think that's a really great skill to have, because one of the things that I see a lot lately is people will say something like, explain it to me like I'm 5,
Right. And that's what you have to do.
Break it down. Yeah. And that is really great, because you don't want to make people feel stupid just because you understand something really well and they've never heard of it before. You want to make it so they're comfortable. But something you just said about listening and that being something that you're really good at, I think that is something that needs to be proliferated and preached more, that we need to be good listeners. My dad would always say to me, and I'm sure he would still say it to me now, you've got one mouth and 2 ears.
Yes,
and
that's
you have them
as
for
a
a
sales
reason.
trainer, I used to say that all the time. It's like, you've got one mouth and 2 ears, use them in that proportion. Right?
Yeah, my dad would say, ask a question and then shut up and listen. So there is
And what does your brain do with it? Right? Does what people saying, does it just wash over you, or do you actually do something with it in your head as it's coming in? And I make pictures with it. I mean, I tend to make pictures with whatever people are saying.
Okay.
It's the way I understand things.
Oh, I like that. That's neat.
Yeah.
Do you ever take the pictures out of your mind and put them on paper?
Yes. Yeah. When I'm trying to analyze something, I do it all visually.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. If I can't draw while I'm thinking, I can't think.
Okay, so this is really funny. The podcast that was released today is with a woman named Katie Hamilton Schaefer, and she refers to herself as a doodler. And when she is creating new ideas, she'll have this beautiful picture that she's doodled out, and then she's like, okay, here's what we're going to do next. And I think that's so neat.
Yeah. And it's funny because it's not something that I ever did consciously. But I think I've been doing it since like forever.
Okay.
That the way I think is with a pen in my hand.
Yeah.
And I can't even make a list in my head without writing it down. And I really have to have everything like out of my head and onto the paper. And whether it's words or drawings. To me, mind maps are the greatest thing that have ever been created. Do you know what a mind map is?
I do, yes. And they're very fun and very valuable.
Incredibly valuable. And when people don't know what they are, I'm like, how could you not know what this is and do your job? This is like the best thing.
I know, it's such a great tool.
Like, I can't make a list. I really can't make a list of ideas. You go, item 1, item 2, item 1A. Yeah. And then it's like, okay, now we're on 2B, 3, 4. Oh, what about 2C? And 2C1, and then we're down on 5, like that. I don't think in a straight line. Yeah. I'm ADHD. The fact that I can get a line straight at all is amazing.
I feel my best thoughts and ideas come to me when I'm in motion. So whenever I'm out for a walk, I go walking every day, usually 4 to 6 miles. And so I'll be out there and I'm walking, and I'm thankful now that we have these phones. I try to just keep it in my bag so I'm not, looking at it, and just put on a podcast or put on music. But I am thankful for the Notes app, because if I think of something and I'm like, oh, I want to add that to my list, or I really want to remember that, or here's a good idea for this like other idea that I've been playing around with that I'm trying to figure out, is this actually something? So for me, that's been a very helpful tool. So I can then, come back, and when I sit on the computer, I'm like, oh yeah, I wrote that down earlier and now I want to act on it.
The part that I find really funny is this concept that I'm actually going to remember something from 1 minute. Because it's like, I could have thought about it in the kitchen, walked into my office, and have forgotten it.
Well, how many times does that happen when you're sitting in one room in your house and you're like, oh, I need to go find whatever it is. Like, I need to go find that piece of paper, or I need to go find my glasses or whatever. And then you walk into another room and you're like, why am I here?
Right. Why am I here?
Why did I just get up?
Of course, I can remember lyrics from 1962.
Yes.
Right? But I can't remember why I'm in the kitchen.
Oh my gosh. I saw a meme the other day, and it said, like, I wish that I could remember more. I wish my brain had the ability to remember more things, but for some reason I can't let go of all those song lyrics from the 90s. And I was like, That is
and 90s, and mine are from the 60s, and I still remember them. It's like, I'm always surprised, playing something on Spotify, and I'm thinking, I haven't heard this song since 1968.
And you still
and I
sing it
know
word
the
for
whole
word.
song, word
Yeah.
for word.
Yeah,
Right?
it's
So
wild.
why is that? But cannot remember why I'm in the kitchen. What did I come in here to get?
Totally.
It's really weird. I don't understand it at all. I don't think anyone understands it.
I don't think anyone does, because I've had this conversation in the past, and it's always just baffling how, I used to say, like, if all of my college coursework were to have been, set to music, perhaps I would have been a 4.0 student, because I would have been able to remember everything so much easier.
Were you a good student?
I would say I was above average, but okay. I wasn't I wasn't straight A's by any means, but I think that I was, I did all right.
That's good. I was a terrible student. And the reason I became an art student was because I got to college. And I got there, I was like, I'm not going to be able to survive this. No. I'm not going to be able to sit through classes for an entire day and then write papers and then take tests. It's like, I'm really ADHD.
Okay.
So there was just, I wish I'd considered this before I got there, but I got there, I was like, how am I going to survive this for 4 years?
Yeah.
And I realized that I wasn't going to. Plus, I was 2 years younger than everybody else.
Oh my gosh.
I got to college when I was 16. So
okay, that's very young.
The girls were all 2 years older than me. Yeah. So I was like, I'm really in trouble here. What am I going to do? So I figured out that I could go to art school.
Okay.
And that you didn't have to sit in classes in the same way. You didn't sit and pay attention. And plus, there were a lot more girls. So art school was perfect for me, except I wasn't an artist. I was faking it the whole time.
Oh
but I
Where did
end
you
up
go to school?
I grew up in New York City, so I went to a school in New York called New Paltz.
Okay.
And which had way too many drugs for me, so I had to leave.
Got it.
I had an affinity for all those drugs, and it was like it wasn't fair for me to be there. And so I ended up transferring to the University in Buffalo.
Oh, okay.
And I graduated from the University of Buffalo.
Right on. Yeah. So are you a Buffalo Bills fan?
I am not. I don't have the sports gene.
Okay.
I just don't have the gene at all. I don't understand it. I can't make sense out of it. I can follow the rules. That part, I can watch a game, but I have no interest in being a fan.
Okay, fair. I just had to ask because I know Buffalo's got a big fan base since it's not that big.
Big fan base. People are crazy up there. Yeah. No, they're really crazy.
So where did you end up in business school?
At NYU.
Oh, right on. Okay.
Which is now considered a good school.
Yeah.
And the Stern School.
Okay, yeah.
The guy who owns Hart's Mountain, his name is Stern. Yeah. And he gave a whole bunch of money for putting his name on there.
Okay, nice. It's interesting. I went to the University of San Diego, and I joke now that there's absolutely no way I've even... No, USD, the one on the hill.
USD, okay.
Yeah. And I joke now that, I wouldn't get in with my grades because it's just gained so much, in popularity and prestige and all of that. So I tell my friends, I'm like, hey, our diploma's increased in value since we graduated because look at USD now.
I used to date a woman who has a math degree from UCSD.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, wow, she must be really smart.
Yeah.
And she is smart, but she says that's not reflected in my degree. She says, when I went there, it wasn't hard to get in.
Oh.
And it's really funny.
No, it's interesting. Yeah. Things have changed so much.
Degree inflation,
right.
Yeah. Okay. Even the school I went to, University of Buffalo, when I went there, it was kind of a question mark. And now it's considered a great school.
Yeah. It's interesting how things change. I remember when I was applying to college, everybody applied to San Diego State. San Diego State was the college that it was like they would take anybody. So it was everybody's backup school.
Right. I didn't know that had changed.
No, I think it has now because I've
Yeah,
had
no, you
friends.
said that. I didn't realize it had. It sounds like it's
Yeah.
much
So I have
more.
friends with kids who applied to San Diego State and didn't get in. And I'm like, what? I thought that they took everybody. Not anymore.
Oh,
So,
good. Well, that's good. That's good for the
yeah.
kids going there now.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. All
that's so
right.
funny.
So another thing that I wrote down when I was reading through your history, because I love words, and you wrote down that you had a business coaching franchise that failed spectacularly. And
Yes, it really did.
spectacular is one of my favorite words. So I was like, okay, you need to explain to me why you said that, or what happened.
Well, because it did. But I was looking for a way to scale business coaching.
Okay.
And when I started doing it, there wasn't a word business coaching. It was
Okay.
something that I didn't know what to do next. I had been working as a consultant, and I woke up one morning, literally woke up one morning, and the voice in my head said, "You're not doing your life's work. You're getting older. You'd
Mm-hmm.
better get busy." That was it. And I was
Wow.
like, "What's that mean?" I said, "That's not helpful." I said, "What's that mean?" And because it really sounded like someone was speaking to me.
Okay.
And I'm looking around like, okay, what's that supposed to mean? And I heard the same thing over again. You're
Mm-hmm.
not doing your life's work. You're getting older. You'd better get busy. And I was like, what am I said it, I knew it was true,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't. And the reason it was true is I was doing this work for corporations, big technology corporations.
Okay.
We were doing market research and then market strategy based on the research.
Uh-huh.
And so I learned a lot in the job, but I realized I didn't really care about these
Oh.
giant companies. The
Mm-hmm.
people I cared about were small business owners.
Okay.
So I quit that job within a week,
Okay.
but I didn't know what to do next. Had no idea. And all my friends are telling me, you should go be a coach. There's this new thing and it's called coaching and you should go be a coach. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I don't really want to work with people's problems all day long. I don't want to deal with their problems. And somebody said to me, somebody said, don't coach them in their lives, coach their businesses. You know about that. And I
Uh-huh.
was like, well, I do know about that. Maybe I can go do that. But there
Yeah.
was no such thing called business
Uh-huh.
coaching at the time. I also used to think that I have a saying, which is if everyone around you is wrong, you're not being coachable.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
So,
yeah. I
right?
like that.
People are saying,
Uh-huh.
everybody's saying the same thing and you're not listening. You're not being coachable.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a
Well,
saying
sometimes
that,
it's like you have to look and realize, like, if this is failing and then this fails and then this fails and then this fails, it's like, wait a minute, what's the common denominator?
hello, right. And the thing that goes with that is I kind of think that, and I'm going to get religious on you,
That's
spiritual,
okay.
which is
Sure.
that when God wants you to hear something and
Mm-hmm.
you're not paying attention,
Mm-hmm.
then God will put that message wherever it can go.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking this and I'm thinking, everybody is saying the same thing to me. I
Mm-hmm.
said, this is God talking to me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I decided to go into coaching.
Okay.
And it really was all about that message of just go work with them on their businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, that's a really interesting kind of it was a real shift for me. And I
Yeah.
was like, I'm working with these small business owners to help them be more successful.
Mm-hmm.
So at one point, I didn't want to do it myself. I wanted the thing to be bigger. And I
Okay.
started thinking about a franchise idea. I had a friend who had
Oh.
built a franchise and
Uh-huh.
he was saying, oh, go franchise this, go franchise this. So I'm thinking this is a good idea. So I have a meeting with this guy who is worth a lot of money. I don't know how much, a few hundred million. And he told me why
Okay.
I shouldn't go into franchising. And he told me that what would
Okay.
happen. He told me what would happen, which would be, he says, you're going to attract all these people who can't build a business for themselves, and they think you're going
Mm-hmm.
to help them build it. And then when
Mm-hmm.
you give them the systems to build it and they don't work, they're going to get unhappy. And then some of them are going to they're going to quit. And then the ones who don't quit are going to sue you.
Oh, shoot.
So
Okay.
he tells me this thing, and I'm thinking, well, I'm smarter than this guy. I know how to make this work. So I go forward with it anyway. And it eventually happens exactly the way he told me.
No.
Exactly. And it was
Okay.
that they couldn't figure it, people came to me because they couldn't do it on their own. So they think I'm going to help them get clients. So I give them a system to get clients and nobody's using it. So then I start generating the leads for them, but they can't close them. So then I generate the leads and I close them for them. So now I'm doing all the work except the coaching part.
Yeah.
But the people that had joined my franchise they didn't follow the steps well enough to be successful as a coach. So the people were quitting.
Okay.
So I'm generating the leads, I'm closing the leads, and they can't hold on to them. And I'm basically going bankrupt.
I bet. And you're probably exhausted.
So eventually I lost every penny that I put into it.
Oh.
And it failed, as I said, spectacularly. I used up all of my money doing this, and it was not a success at all. So that's why. So I decided that, if you're doing a buyout, that people are going to use to gauge whether or not you're trustworthy, because that's the whole point of your bio anyway, right? Can this person be trusted in this domain of expertise?
Sure.
And I decided that it was in the spirit of full disclosure to tell people about that. And the rest of my bio says that I had done this and I had done that and I was successful doing this, I was successful doing that, and boom, here's the 0 moment of truth. And this is where the failure comes out. And I think that there's, from promoting yourself as an expert, everything you say about yourself shouldn't be good.
Yeah.
Some of it could be like really not good. Well, so this was my disclosure.
I think, though, that's like the beauty of success is that you've had those failures along the way, because that's where the learning is at its peak, where you're like so far down, but it's like, okay, what's this mountain that I can learn from now? And how am I going to take all of that and then apply it to what's next and to how I'm going to rebuild or what I'm going to do after the fact. So, I think, and I also think too, that, admitting failure and talking about failure is a level of vulnerability, right? Because it's very easy to go out into the world and say like, oh, look how great I am. Look at all the things that I've accomplished. But if you also have that level of confidence to say, hey, and I really sucked at this and I failed hard, but here's what I learned. I think it's really cool. So
I think it's Lee Iacocca, the guy who saved Chrysler. I believe he said that I'd never do business with anybody who hadn't gone bankrupt at least once.
Oh, nice. Yeah, because it's like, it also shows if you go bankrupt, right? In depending on the case, obviously, but it shows that you're willing to bet on yourself, right? Yeah.
Depends on the case.
Yeah, depending on the case,
don't want somebody
exactly.
to come back too many times,
Well, exactly, or because they just gambled it all away at the casino, right?
Right.
So you have a long list of different types of coaching that you offer for folks. So are you doing individual coaching and business coaching, or is it a combination of both, or where's your focus at?
Well, my business coaching is one-on-one with the owner.
Oh, okay. So it's the owner
the work
and
that
you.
I do is one-on-one.
Okay.
And now I have some programs that are group programs, and I'm working on a new one that is very exciting to me. I mentioned it when we were talking offline.
Yeah.
That I'm working on a project to combine. I have some business growth technology that is just rock solid. I've used it with tons of people. I've sold it as courses, and everybody who's tried to use my techniques, if they use them, makes money. This stuff just works, and it's simple and it's easy. I shouldn't say it's easy. It's simple. It's easy to follow, and it works all the time. What I'm interested in doing now is combining that business growth tech with what I call practical magic.
Okay.
Which is, and magic is defined as changing the world with your will. Okay. It's, taking your intentions and backing them with magical energy and making things happen out in the world. And what I'm developing is material to teach those techniques to people who aren't necessarily, they're not Harry Potter fans. They don't think about magic, they're dyed in the wool, they're engineering types or, they're accountants or whatever they are however they got to be a CEO.
Sure.
But they're running their businesses. And now I'm giving them techniques to work with that are going to amplify the business technology.
Okay.
And so I'm working on that as a group program.
Cool.
And that's going to come out, I think, in 2 or 3 months. I don't know where.
Okay. So would you say that this definition of magic is like similar or another, or maybe a synonym for manifestation, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Magic and manifestation are very close.
Okay.
Real magic. We're not talking about stage magic, and we're talking about like Harry Potter magic, but only in the real world.
Okay.
Is very much closely tied to manifestation.
Okay.
There's 2 reasons why somebody like me would be interested in magic. And one of which is the manifestation aspects of it. And the other part of it is the spiritual development part of it. Magic, but the idea of magic is very closely tied to spiritual development.
Yeah.
And your development as a spiritual being. So it works with both of those things. It's because as you develop yourself, let's take Jesus, for instance. Jesus was highly spiritually developed and he could turn water into wine. Well, what's that? That's manifestation.
Yeah.
That's what that is. That's just, and all this stuff, the stuff in the Testament that says ye shall be as gods. To me, what that refers to as someone who has become highly spiritually developed, who can manifest things. The idea of God creating the world, that's manifestation, but big.
Yeah. Very big.
We're not talking about finding a parking spot here.
Right.
Or a new apartment. We're not talking about finding a new apartment. We're talking about, creating the world.
Yeah.
And that's what magic is about. Very much about manifestation. That was a good call.
Okay. I just wanted to correlate it to, I feel like manifestation is such a buzzword these days, right? You're seeing everybody, influencers, people on all sorts of, areas of expertise are talking about, manifesting the life of your dreams, manifest this, manifest that. And I'm a big believer in those things. I don't love like the different types of buzzwords, but I am of the very strong belief that if you are a good person and you're putting good out into the world and you are kind and you are loving and you are, working hard and striving for just to put good out into the world. I don't believe in like serendipitous moments. I don't believe in coincidences. I think when you're doing all of those things, the universe brings you the things that are meant to be in your path at the time that they're meant to be there. So I feel like it's similar, but I just wanted to confirm.
Yeah, no, it's very similar.
Were
in my thinking, I don't believe that you have to be good and your intentions have to be positive. I think if your intentions are clear, if they're clear and you focus on them and you bring energy into them and you can manifest things that aren't necessarily for anyone's good. I meet people all the time who say, I don't believe in manifestation. I go, really? I said, really? Or they say, I'm not good at manifestation. I go, really? I said, so can you think of something bad that you really didn't want to happen that happened? And they go, oh, sure. I said, well, that's manifestation. It's just manifesting stuff you didn't want. We focus really. I think the reason it's so easy to manifest things you don't want, it's easy to manifest stuff you don't want.
Yeah.
And I think the reason is because manifestation requires an emotional engagement with the thing that you want to manifest. And we are much better at manifesting negative emotions.
Because it's easier to worry about
manifesting fear.
Yeah, it's easier to be in a fearful state than a delusional state of positivity and confidence and, I know this is going to work out for me.
It really is. It's hard for people it's easy for people to hold on to negative ideas. And it's easy for people to hold on to fear-based emotions.
It is.
And that's just human nature. That's survival.
Yeah.
If we didn't have fear, fear's important for human beings. Fear keeps us alive. Fear keeps us away from the dangerous stuff. So we're really good at fear, right?
Yeah. No, it's
what
so
we're
true.
not good at is love.
Yeah.
We're less good at that. We have to really invest ourselves in something to love it. So it's much easier to manifest negative things.
Yeah.
And, whether I don't know, and I haven't considered whether it's easy to manifest evil things. I think that if the evil things are based in fear, it's probably easier to manifest them.
I would agree with that statement. Yeah, I would agree with that statement. I think that, I tend to be incredibly adverse to negative people. It's really hard for me to be around someone who's really negative on a regular basis. I remember a girl I went to college with, there was always a but. She could say, oh my gosh, it was such a fun day. We were at the beach all day and we did this and we did that. And then she'd be like, but I got sunburned. There was always a but. And I remember at one point I was like, I can't be around this. There's always some negative part of whatever the story was. It could be the best story. There's always a negative but in there. And I'm just like, I can't deal with this. I can't. It's too much. Because I'm an eternal optimist, right? I can be having the worst day, or my heart could be shattered in a million pieces, and I'm always like, well, what's the silver lining? Like, what am I going to learn from this? And sometimes I annoy myself because I'm like, just be mad. It's okay. Just be mad, but I'm always trying to find the good. So yeah.
It's a nice attribute.
I do like it. I think that it serves me well, especially when I'm trying something new or going off on a new business venture, because I am so delusionally confident that I'm like, well, this is totally going to work out. I'm going to make this work out. Like, there is no other option. So
I like that.
Thanks. So tell me more about your entrepreneurship journey, because, going from your software programming that you stumbled into with a fine arts degree, to giving coaching a whirl, from being a stockbroker, like, how did you end up being a successful entrepreneur after all of those different pieces of your path?
I think that I had no choice.
Okay.
I am, as I've mentioned a couple of times, I'm pretty ADHD. And that doesn't qualify you well to be an employee.
Okay.
I was working at General Electric, and I had been fired out of my first corporate job. I was working for Deloitte's. And when they fired me, they said to me, you are doing this job better than anybody has ever done it. But we're firing you because you're never really going to fit in here.
Whoa.
I just didn't fit with the corporate culture.
Okay, that's wild, because if you think about that statement in today's world, that company would be so sued.
Right. But things were different then.
Oh, absolutely.
And but what they did, which was really great, was they got me my next job.
Okay.
They actually moved me into another job at General Electric, and I worked at GE, and I was perfectly suited to the job I had.
Okay, cool.
I really fit in well, and it was a great, whoever figured that out for me, I like to think that this is God smiling.
Yeah.
But whoever figured it out for me got me in there, and it worked out perfectly. And I was there for a couple of years. But I realized the thing I said to myself was, and I don't know who the they is, they're not ever going to let me run this place. That was the thought I had. So I was like, what am I supposed to do with this? So I decided to start my own company, and I started it with a business partner. And the reason I started it, his reason was he actually had ideas about what we could do. And my reason was, I can't work for somebody else.
Okay.
So I just didn't, we started a software company because we had nothing else to do. We had nothing at risk at this point. So we started a software company, and the first one, we sold the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got fired by the company that bought my company.
Okay.
And like they fired me. And the reason they fired me, I said, "You can't fire me. We have a contract." And the guy says, "No, no, no. You violated the contract." I said, "How did I violate the contract?" He says, "You were doing cocaine in the office."
Oh
no. So that wasn't acceptable under the terms of our contract.
Okay, wait. So, but you got to tell me, what year was that? What year was that? Was this the 80s?
That was 1983.
Okay, I was gonna say that sounds awesome.
1983. So they fired me, and I went off and started, and it was great because I had like 3 years of pay that they had to pay me regardless of how they fired me. So, and it was a fair amount of money too.
Perfect.
So I used that time to finish business school.
Okay.
And then we started another company in the same line of work.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, they had violated our non-compete. They had violated the terms of our agreement, which voided the non-compete.
Oh,
so
there you go.
We started another business doing the same thing as the other one did.
Uh-huh.
And eventually sold that one to a German bank.
Okay.
And I worked for the German bank for a while. And then I decided I just wasn't suited to working for other people. I've never been suited to it. So when you say, like, how did you do all those things? I was like, well, I just kept moving on.
Yeah.
So we had our own software company, and we did that again. And then I was like, now what am I supposed to do? Mm-hmm. So I decided to become a stockbroker and the reason was, because if you were good at it and you stuck to it for a long time, it was paid really well. Mm-hmm. But I had decided to move into sales.
Okay.
I had my first wife's father had recently cashed out for like about $20 million.
Oh, nice.
After having several failures. He had a whole batch of failures. Mm-hmm. And then this one was successful. Okay. Got paid a whole batch of money. And I said, how does Fred do this? What does he have that I don't have? And Fred had a lot of things that I didn't have, but I was a kid and I was like, Yeah. And what I put together was he knew how to sell. He was great around people and he knew how to sell. And I decided I'm going to learn how to sell.
Okay.
I said, this is really an important part of my career development.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get better at being with people. And I worked on myself. I actually worked on it. And I took the stockbroker job in part because I thought it was going to help me be a better salesperson.
Okay.
Which it did. It helped a lot.
Yeah.
So I did that for a year. I hated it. I quit. And then I went into working in this strategy firm. And it was great. And it paid really well. Plus it was fun and it was interesting. And yet I woke up with this idea that I couldn't do this work for the rest of my life. I wanted to serve entrepreneurs.
Okay.
And that's how I became
That's how you became one. Yeah.
Broke into it. And I was like, that's how I became a coach. And that's my love for entrepreneurs just kept growing.
That's so cool.
Like, that's just where I belong,
Yeah. Well, it sure sounds like it. How long have you been doing this phase for?
I started coaching in 1996.
Oh, okay. So
that gives us 28 years.
28 years, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's exciting. I mean, I feel like you're just this like ever evolving man of all of these things that you've got. Like, I feel like there's a different story around every corner.
There's a lot of stories, And people say, you can't do that. You can't do this. And my answer is,
yes,
you used the word delusional a couple of times. I'm like, yes, I can.
Yeah.
Of course I can. When I was writing software, I was writing some fairly out there software. Mm-hmm. And people would say to me, you can't do that. And I would go like, it's software. I can do anything.
Yeah.
And that was my response. And people would say, well, but you can't do this. And I'd go like, you forget, I'm an artist. I can do anything.
Yeah.
And that's just always been my philosophy, which is I'm an artist. I'm a creator. I can do anything I want. And I just have to figure out how.
Yeah.
So sometimes the figuring out how doesn't work out and you end up walking on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
the figuring out is just if you're creative enough and you have the tools, you can do it.
Yeah.
So whenever people say to me, you can't do this, I have like, why not?
Yeah.
And you forget I went to art school.
Yeah.
So,
So how many people do you work with at any given time? Or how many
not
businesses?
many. It's kind of one-on-one coaching is fairly, you give a lot.
I was going to
You
say,
put a
I would
lot,
assume
you put a
so.
lot of emotional energy into the work.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
my cap is about 8 individuals at a time.
Okay. That
And
still is a lot of people.
that's a lot of people. That's a lot of
Yeah.
people. And
Especially with having to shift your brain in and out of each business and each person. And, I mean, obviously, how it is, when you're talking to somebody different, like you have to maybe change your approach. Like maybe they're not as like gregarious, or maybe they're more soft spoken, or maybe they're more of an introvert or an extrovert. So you have to kind of like ebb and flow in order to tap into them and be able to bring out the best and give them the value that they're looking for. So that's a lot of mental gymnastics for you.
it is, and it's a lot of emotional gymnastics.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I use my magic skills as
Mm-hmm.
part to make those transitions.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I can, because I energetically, I can just dial into somebody and
Uh-huh.
ask myself, like, okay, so how do I need to be now?
Uh-huh.
And I'll experience it's almost like a personality change,
Oh, uh-huh.
that
Uh-huh.
I'll experience that change. So I need to leave space between my appointments
Oh, I
because
bet.
I really
Yeah.
have to rewire myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I have techniques for doing it that make it pretty easy.
Mm-hmm. That's so great. I love
Yeah.
this. I feel like you
It,
and I
it-
were meant
I
to meet. This has been such a fun conversation.
yeah. Yeah, I call it, my slogan is changing the world one entrepreneur at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I want to do. I help
Yeah.
people to transform what they're working on, and then it plays out into their families and into the
Mm-hmm.
people who work for them, into those people's families and into their
Mm-hmm.
communities and so on. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to make a contribution at that level,
Yeah,
and it's
no,
neat.
that's fantastic. And I think that's so true. And I think that that's often, I always call them like unintended consequences, and
Yes.
they can be positive or negative. But I love unintended positive consequences or unexpected positive consequences. Like when you're
Yeah.
going, you're doing something, but then you don't realize the impact that it's going to have, this like domino effect for the better. And then you're like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Like this person or this group has
Yeah.
changed so much in all of these ways when we were just here focusing on this one.
Very, very much so. I think you have to be willing to accept the bad unintended consequences with the good ones. You just
Yes.
have to be willing to accept them. Yeah, that's just like, oh, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't expect that to happen.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
We didn't know that was going to happen. Right?
Totally. So how do your clients find you?
So I don't really know. Um, we
Hey,
do
that's
some
okay.
outreach,
Uh-huh.
from time to time when the roster isn't full, we do some outreach.
Mm-hmm.
But people find me, I think they find me because I've written a lot and I've
Mm-hmm.
spoken a lot. I
Mm-hmm.
have 4 books,
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah.
people sort of stumble. Mostly it's like they stumble in.
Sure. Yeah.
They say, "Hey, I heard about you,
Mm-hmm.
and like, what's up? What are you working on?"
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if it's something I can help with, then I offer my services. I mean, that's really how it works.
Yeah.
But I my one of my books was a best-selling business book.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Be Unreasonable.
Okay, I wrote that down, or I added it to my list of things to read.
Be Unreasonable is a good book. My first
Yeah.
book is less good,
Okay.
but Be Unreasonable. And I recently published a book that I believe was channeled. Do you hear that bell?
I do.
Yeah, that's the trash man. I mentioned to you, I live in central Mexico.
Uh-huh.
And so some things are less evolved than we're used to.
Oh,
And
okay.
that's the guy who picks up the trash. And
Oh,
they just
okay.
drive along ringing their bell so that you know that they're out there and you bring it
Uh-huh.
out, otherwise
You
it's
know,
something like
It is funny how different things are in different countries. I told you I'm here in Greece right now,
Right,
and
right.
I'm on the seventh floor of the building that I'm in, and I'm on a
Oh,
corner, and and the building is also on the street corner. So the sun rises behind the building across the street, and it's very beautiful. And the other morning, I woke up, and it was just the sky was pink and purple and orange, and it was absolutely stunning. So I jumped out of
right.
bed and I ran onto the balcony and I took video with my phone. And I looked at the time and I was like, oh, it's only 8:45 at night in California. I'll text this video to my mom because I thought it was so pretty. So
Right.
she responds back like, is that thunder I hear in the background? And I listened to the video and I was like, what's she talking about? It's not storming. So I listened to it and I was like, oh no, that's just like the construction down the street. I'm like, they
Right.
start really early here. They're just like
Wow.
throwing things into the dumpsters and knocking things down. And yeah, it's not like at home where it's like you can't start before 7 or whatever it may be. So
Here they start when they want to,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and they make noise as late as they feel like it.
Oh
We have
yeah.
these rockets. They're called cohetas.
Okay.
And what they are is they're like giant firecracker rockets.
Oh,
And
okay.
they shoot them off and they make these loud booms. And
Uh-huh.
if it's a saint celebration, they'll set off a lot of them. And
Oh.
saint celebrations happen at least once a week, if not more often.
Uh-huh. Oh
So
wow. That's a
the
lot.
fire, the cohetas go off and it's like, I jump.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Oh my gosh. It is
it's
so
really funny.
interesting
It's really
how
different.
different countries and different cultures and different just ways of living. And then, you go there and you're like, what's happening?
This town I live in has been chastised by the federal government for having too many celebrations,
Oh,
which is
that's an
like the
odd thing
weirdest.
to get in
It,
trouble for.
it really
Right?
is.
You guys are
But
too happy over there. Stop celebrating.
everybody who knows this town says the same thing. There's too much celebrating.
Oh my
It's really pretty
gosh.
funny.
Well, that's wild. I'm like, that makes me want to visit even more. Yeah.
It is a good town for that. And
Yeah.
this week was Independence Day week.
Oh,
So the
fun.
level of celebration is amped up like
I
tremendously.
I can imagine. I can imagine.
Yeah. It's
Oh my
like
God.
having July 4th only, but like for 7 days in a row.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
That can be a lot with the fireworks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to live near a ballpark and they did fireworks on any game that was Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. And it
Huh?
was very loud. I mean, I was about 300 yards from the field. So it was very, very, very loud. And now I'm like so immune to fireworks. I hear them and it's like it doesn't even register because I'm like, I could sleep through them at this point.
I think if you were in San Miguel, you'd hear them.
I can imagine. Judging by how you describe them, I think you're correct.
It's really quite something.
Oh my gosh. Well, this has been such a fun conversation. This time
It has indeed.
absolutely flew by. Thank you so much for sharing your story with me. I feel like we need to do a part 2 at some point because I feel like we only touched the tip of the iceberg with you, Paul.
You know what? It's true. There's a lot of pieces to this, and I've
Yeah.
made a lot of changes.
Oh,
So yeah, the
awesome.
whole idea of round 2, I was thinking this is like round 12.
Yeah. It's funny because after I came up with the round 2 concept and kind of like thought it through, about a year later, I thought, you know what? We as people, we have mini round 2s also. There can be big ones, but then there can also be these little ones where
Yes.
there's little things that happen, but there's still significant little things. So I call those mini round 2s.
Mini round 2s. Okay. I've got a
Yeah.
lot of mini round 2s. They're
Yeah.
just, the idea that people stay. I have a friend who lives on the street that he grew up on,
Mm-hmm.
married a woman who he went to grade school with, and throughout the whole cycle, and has
Mm-hmm.
never left his street where
Wow.
he grew up. And how could you live that way? How can you live like that?
Yeah.
You know?
That
And
is,
it's really a
I
different
feel
way
like
of having your life be.
it is. And, but I do wonder if that's more common than we may realize.
It may be.
You know,
You have no way of knowing.
we have no way of knowing. But, then there's other people that like you, like me, that want to go and see what else is out there and other latitudes and longitudes, right?
My mother held the same, not the same position, but the same kind of job her whole life.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas my father went from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing to thing.
Well,
And
we know who you take after.
when I look at my parents, I go like I'm so much like my father was,
Mm-hmm.
and nothing at all like my mother in any way
Interesting.
across the
Yeah.
whole every dimension. And it's
Interesting.
I wonder if that's also true with other people. They like you take after one of them and not the other.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know. For me, I think that I take after both. I think in a lot of ways I'm more like my dad, but then there's some ways where I am like my mom. But my brother and I often laugh that like, oh, you're so much like dad and he's so much like my mom, like
Yeah.
in the majority of aspects. So,
My kids are like that. My daughter, I believe, is much more like me, and my son is much more like his mom.
uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's
it's just weird
interesting.
how that happens.
It totally is. It totally is. Well, let
When I
everybody
think of my
know.
brother, he wasn't like anybody.
Oh, well, hey.
He wasn't like anybody.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah. I mean, it is, and you never know. I mean, I always think that's interesting too with siblings. How some kids are so much like their parents, and then there's some, and you're just like, where did this kid come from? But I guess it just happens. I don't know. I don't
Just
know how
is.
to dig. I don't know how to. Well, why don't you let everybody know how they can find you and reach out to you if they have interest in having you come work your magic.
I would love to. It's really easy. My website is lemberg.com. That's my name on the screen, Lemberg.
Yep.
And lemberg.com explains what I do and how I work. And if you want to reach out to me, you can go to the contact us page and drop me a note. If
Awesome.
you're interested in coaching, my coaching pages all have contact me buttons on them and so on. So that's really easy.
All
And
right.
I'm very findable that way.
Good, good. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being here. This was so much fun. And
Thanks,
everybody,
man.
thank you for watching, listening. And as always, please leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Like, subscribe, share, all the good things. And we will talk to you next week. Bye.
Great. Great. Thanks, Nikki.